Okay, we're on YouTube.
Okay, very good. So I'd like to call the December 16th, 2021 meeting of the Town of Rochester Zoning Board of Appeals meeting to order. We'll start. Charlie, could you lead us through the pledge to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nicole, if you could take the roll, please.
Chair Saris,
Present.
Mr. Fisher,
Present.
Mr. Berenger. Ms. Bressler,
Present.
Mr. Wassel,
Present.
Ms. Vinton. Caring for a new baby.
Okay.
Okay.
And let the record show indicate that you're here, Nicole, and that Erin is facilitating the Zoom meeting for us as well.
Got it.
So thank you. And the first order of business today is the application of Jeffrey Shapiro, an area variance on 62 Raycliffe Road. Is Mr. Shapiro here? You could please take a seat here. The end of the table would be great. Where you can see. So before we start, I'd just like to explain a little bit about a process to you, so you understand the steps involved. You know, it's our 100th time through it, and maybe your first time through it, right? So typically, this will be have a disposition of meetings. The first meeting, you present what your project is. The board has the opportunity to ask you clarifying questions about it. Looking for additional information. If the town attorney was here, the board may also ask the town attorney for clarifying information around the rules and regulations as well, right? If all the questions we have are answered and there's no further information needed, we typically move for a motion for a public hearing. That happens in the second meeting, right? So the public hearing, the board secretary will publish notice, so members of the public have the opportunity to either send in letters or come in person. And
So I'm sorry, does that happen with the recommendation one way or the other of the board to that second meeting, or that's?
it does not. Let me walk through it and we'll be good. There's no shortcuts. That's so the first rule of zoning board is there's no shortcuts, right? So the public comes in, they can make statements either in support or against the project, right? It's not a debate between you and the public about the valid aspects of the project. It's more for them to have the opportunity to speak, right? The board may also, during that session, we may ask other boards or commissions within the town to provide public comment. So there's situations where we've asked the Environmental Commission to comment on a particular application, or the Highway Department, something like that. It's not very frequent, but it does happen, right? After the public has had a chance to speak, again, we may ask you some more clarifying questions, ask for more information, that type of thing. And then that's it for the process for there. The third meeting is typically when we make a decision. After we've had an opportunity to hear the public, there'll be a motion. And then there's certain things that can happen. We can grant the application as it's presented. We can grant it a lesser or larger piece of that application. We can grant it with specific conditions, or we can deny it outright, right? So those are sort of the four things that can happen.
Okay.
So this meeting is more for you to present your project, and for the board members to have the opportunity to ask your questions about it.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Good. Okay, so with that, let's hear about your project.
Okay.
So
Is it okay if I ask a question? I'm sorry, I'm
Sure.
not sure who is the board actually. Are you both on the
We're
board?
both on the board. He is the chairman.
Okay. And the two people.
and the two
that are on-
people on the screen as well.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate you hearing me out. I do have one question for the board. I'd like to know if all the information that I sent, if everybody on the board was able to view that in advance. There was a video, there was my letter, there were letters of support from the homeowners association, and then some images of correspondence with the two offices.
All the documents have been reviewed by the.
Everybody, okay. So then I would ask if it's okay for me to read this letter, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
However you'd like to go about your
Yeah,
presentation. is
well,
fine.
this is, if you've seen all the information, then basically this would be it. So to the zoning board of appeals, let me know if you can't hear me with this mask. I ask that the board hear the entirety of this letter before forming any opinions on my request for a variance to have a fence on my property. First, I realized that the fence was erected without proper town code acceptance. I'd like to explain the mitigating circumstances. My plan was definitely to go through the proper venues to apply for the variance. I will explain why the variance is necessary after explaining the confusion about the original application. Having never gone through this process, I was trying my best to follow the guidelines. I filled out the original application with a $50 fee. I was told that upon receiving the application, I would be put on the schedule for a meeting in fall. I sent a video of trucks dashing down our very dusty road at prohibitive speeds. There is a 50-mile-per-hour sign posted at the bottom of our road. As far as I knew, I was scheduled for the zoning board of appeals meeting. I received no further notice about what to do for payment or further requirements. This time around, I've received the appropriate letter. You should be able to see, I sent images of the correspondence from the previous time, shown in the images I've sent to the committee. Please refer to the dates of the correspondence. My intention was to present my very compelling case to the board, but when I called the morning of the meeting, I was told that I was not scheduled because I had not paid the $200 fee. I had every intention of paying, but since I had not received the email or letter stating so, I took it for granted that the fee would be paid at the beginning of the meeting. I have never gone through this before. I'm not blaming anyone, but there was certainly some confusion in correspondence. Upon learning that my case was not going to be heard, I became quite frustrated and canceled the application. The builders of the fence, which is Oakwood Fences, said that the fence would need to be erected in cement footings and stained before the cold weather, and I wasn't sure there would be enough time before the next scheduled meeting. So I'm not trying to explain away the fact that the fence was erected, just to explain how that came about. As to the request for the variance, it has become an emotional and psychological nightmare dealing with speeding delivery trucks, particularly UPS, FedEx, Amazon, and refuse trucks. We are now in COVID times, and we, the Homeowners Association, have put in speed bumps. We've spoken with drivers, all to no avail. In late spring through late October, the dust is so bad that my wife, Humako, and I cannot sit outside our home anywhere on the property. We can't put clothes out to dry. The cars get covered with a layer of dust in a few hours on the driest days. It's caused us great anguish and emotional stress. Every time I heard a vehicle either coming up or going down the road, we would have to mentally prepare for what was about to occur. The 6-foot fence has made a huge improvement on both the dust and the noise. I had it set back so that it is aesthetically pleasing and not an impediment on the road at all. We, again, Homeowners Association, are responsible for everything to do with our property and the private road. We pay David Lawrence to plow, clean, and maintain the road. He feels this fence is in no way a negative concern for the maintenance. Neighbors on the road, including other homeowners, board members, are pleased with the fence. Please see the attached emails. Hopefully you had a chance to look at those of support. It has been realized that our location in particular bears the brunt of the dust and noise, as it is a straightaway to and from both hills. I have lived in the same location for over 40 years. I've never had any issues with the town. I'm a taxpayer, a resident in good standing, and I'm not one to create problems, but the situation with dust and noise has become unbearable, and the fence has greatly improved those conditions. I apologize to the board for having gone this route, but ask for understanding of what we have had to endure. Please, for a moment, just put yourselves in our position. It would be difficult to assess visually right now just how bad the road can be in spring to late fall. as the speed bumps are now removed for winter plowing and dust is down only when there is winter moisture. I've included the video clip. Hopefully you've had a chance to see that. One of the many trucks and vehicles that travel our road each and every day since COVID brought so many people out of the city. And lastly, this was not in the letter that I sent you. The front of our house is actually at the bottom of our driveway, not by the front of the road. So in effect, making the road frontage a side fence based on the restrictions for front and side heights of fences. I've sent you just in the last couple of days, hopefully you all had a chance to see these digital images of the setting of the house, of the entrance, and of the fence. Respectfully, Jeff and Hinako Shapiro. That's all I.
That's it? Okay. So first, the position of the way the house is laid out
Yeah.
on the lot doesn't determine the front or side yard.
Okay.
It's just
So
the
what
front or
does
side yard
actually,
is determined by the position of the street to the property,
okay,
right? Because you've seen many houses that are turned sideways versus, right? So that's not the determinating
Okay.
factor. So how far from the road is the house set back from the road?
oh, Gary, you have any idea how far the house would be off the road?
Probably 80 to 100 feet.
80 to 100 feet?
That would be a guess. If you like.
Yeah, we could get to that measurement, of course.
Yeah, you know, it's approximately 80, let's call it 75, just to be on the low side to 100 on the high side. Seem reasonable?
Yeah.
to you?
And it's downhill from the road.
Yeah, okay. And the fence is how far from the road currently?
Fence is about off the edge of the road, about feet.
About 10 feet in? Okay. And just, I know it's in a residential zone. I just want to be sure there's no commercial activity.
Well, just the trucks, I mean.
No, I mean,
Oh, no.
a business.
Right.
Located on that, right? So there's no businesses. Okay. And the dust that you talk about, I mean, you say the whole road is, none of the road is paved, the whole thing is,
Correct.
is dirt. So I imagine the neighbors have a similar situation
Some of the
that they're
neighbors do,
getting
but-
dusty as well.
True,
right?
but as I mentioned, our stretch is the worst on the road. Because it's flat, the hill comes down to it and the
Right.
hill comes up to it. That's where they hit the speed bumps and they race through that as quickly as they can.
Right. But the neighbors are impacted and the speed dump bumps come down in the winter, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So in your view, if everybody obeyed the speed limit coming down the road or less, what is the speed limit that the
15.
neighborhood has on it?
15,
What is it, 15?
50 miles an hour.
No,
1.5.
1.5, okay. Yeah, I know, the masks are, plus you add my age to the hearing and it makes it really tough for me. 15. So if the trucks all obeyed the speed limit, would this still be an issue?
It would still be an issue. I mean, we've had them, I've clocked them back and forth. I mean, I've done this a lot. Arguments with UPS, arguments with FedEx, them claiming they're going the speed limit, sometimes not. I've gone behind them. Sometimes they're way over, sometimes they're close to 50. Nobody ever does 50, but say
Right.
17 or 18. Because of the shape of the trucks, this box truck so low to the ground,
Right.
the dust from 40 years of a hard packed
Right.
dirt road, the dust has come up to the surface.
And how
So-
often is the road maintained then?
Oh, it's constantly maintained, but at this
Yeah.
point, unless it's paved, it's really not going to change.
Right, but
They put.
I mean,
new
in your letter,
material-
what you said, I'm just going based on your letter.
Yeah,
You said the contributory factor was the speed of the trucks going down the road.
it is.
So that seems to have been exacerbated by COVID because there's more deliveries now. People are
Correct.
doing things online.
Yeah.
There, I understand, the last mile delivery and the importance of having it
Sure.
on time
I
and
do too.
probably better than a lot of people. So in prior years, pre-COVID, clearly it wasn't as big an issue. Perhaps they obeyed the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. There was less traffic. Yeah.
Well, there's that, but it also is the fact that they've broken down the surface more than it was previously. So all of this traffic.
So a lack of maintenance over
No, no,
time,
it's
or a
not
lack of maintenance
at
because
all.
of the increased traffic.
it's not a lack of maintenance. The road is maintained constantly. It was just maintained this week. I mean,
Right.
Dave Lawrence is constantly putting new material on, but it's reached a point where the constant heavy trucks coming up and down,
Right.
it doesn't matter what you do unless you pave it, that this stuff is so close to the surface that it's just brought right up, especially with these low-lying trucks that are like squares.
Okay.
Even at 15 miles an hour, they pull the dust right along with them,
All right.
especially on the straightaway.
Thanks. Charlie, anything that you know?
If you're going up Raycliffe, you're on the right-hand side, right?
Right.
Okay, I did see the right place then when I went by.
It's a grayish dark
Yeah.
fence.
What about if they put a chemical on it to keep the dust down like they
We
do the
tried.
racetracks?
We did try that last year. I did it as an experiment.
Mm.
We put it on about 300 feet. The problem is that they draw the stuff down as they come down the hill. They're bringing all the material with them. So if we did the whole road, it's possible, but it's not going to happen. It's just too expensive. It's prohibitive for, when you have a homeowner association with over 25 houses, you can't get anybody to agree as a majority. But we did do that. I spent a fair amount of money trying to do that section of the road. But as these box trucks come up, they're pulling the stuff this way, and then the ones that come down, they hit the speed bumps, they don't stop, and they just keep pulling all the material right down where we are, unfortunately.
And what I have for now.
Michael or Jill?
I actually have two questions. So
Sure.
one, my first question has to do with the height that you chose. So first of all, can you help us understand like why 6 feet? For example, if you had built 4 feet, that would be in compliance. That's what's allowed. What was that not recommended by the fence company?
It was absolutely not recommended by the fence company. Actually, the recommendation was 8 feet. But I thought that was going a little bit far, and 6 feet just seemed to be, it's made a huge difference so that I know that they were right. And I would have actually preferred to build at 8 feet, but it seemed even for the people on the road that might be asking a bit much. So I think we came to terms on 6 feet for the height.
So the company said that 4 feet wouldn't make a significant difference in the dust. It's really the dust more than the noise, right, that we're talking about?
Right. Well, it's dust and noise. I mean, the sounds of these big trucks when they haul by without, especially the refuse trucks when they're empty. So it's a combination of things. When the speed bumps are there, when they're empty trucks, they hit the speed bumps slightly and rattle. If they're full and empty, it's really different amount of sound. But it's mostly dust and then noise. It's not as much privacy. It's mostly dust first and then noise.
Okay. My other question was, did you think about planting like more evergreens as more of a buffer? I realize that's a longer term
Right. It's a long-term
solution. Yeah.
We have certainly thought about that. Actually, my wife and I talked about it just yesterday. In spring, we will. On the farther section, actually, where we haven't put the fence, it's totally open. And that's still another section where that's happening. We can probably plant up there. It's very hard to plant where we put the fence because it's so shady. Things just don't grow. And there's all the salt from the road, so it's not really conducive for fast growing vegetation.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Michael?
Hi, well, a lot of good questions have been asked. That doesn't leave much for me. I don't really have an, I did have like a follow-up question. What substance was applied to the road as an experiment, I guess, to try to cut down on the amount of dust that was being produced?
Yeah, so I've researched this. We've talked it over with the homeowners association a number of times in terms of what we can do to mitigate the situation. The one that I found that people were able to accept, it's called Dust Down. It's a well-known product, DUSTDOWN. It's non-toxic. It's supposed to be vegetation friendly. And it basically works. But in this case, because unless we do the whole road, it's almost, was it 3/4 of a mile long, like I said, it doesn't work successfully because of the trucks beforehand and after collect the dust and bring it right over where the section that was done. So the product is a good product, and we did try it.
And did I hear correctly earlier that you said that like a lot of people are experiencing the same kind of dust nuisance?
People, everybody on the road, well, we shouldn't say everybody, people all the way at the top of the road aren't, because there aren't nearly as many vehicles going by. We're right at the middle, and we're on this straightaway, so we get most of the traffic at speeds that are prohibitive. So everybody experiences a little, but the last, say, 5, 6 houses at the very top of the road, unless they're getting a delivery, they don't really notice it as much. But I'd say a couple of the other houses do, but we're definitely I believe, the most seriously affected on the road.
And I guess my last question, I'm also, and we all are all familiar with gravel roads. I personally have noticed when it's resurfaced, there's a lot less dust. I don't know if that's your experience. You mentioned a few minutes ago that it was recently resurfaced, or did I misunderstand that? And if it was resurfaced, do you notice any kind of improvement there?
I do not, because, and you can speak to David Lawrence, or I can have a statement by him. He's the person who maintains the road. His dad built the community 42 years ago. David's been maintaining ever since. He does the plowing, he does the ditches, he, moves brush, does everything. He's quite amazing. And he maintains, I think it's twice a year, he scarifies the whole road, puts down new material. The problem is, because of the abundance of vehicles since COVID, that the road over 40 years, it was all item 4. So they kept adding item 4, not gravel, because the gravel just moves around. But they always try and put things that will pack. But because of the heavy trucks, it brings all of this, over 40 years, you get a lot of very fine material in that pack. And that's gradually moved up to the surface. So whatever they put on top, they can't put gravel because that just skids around. But if it's for scarifying something, it's all right up at the top. So maintaining it looks good. It helps a little bit, but within a few days, as far as dust, it's back.
Got it. I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you.
So one of the things we also do is look to explore alternatives that may alleviate the situation and not require a variance, right? So, to reduce the traffic, has the homeowners association considered a centralized delivery point so the trucks aren't running back and forth? I see this a lot of times with mailboxes where there's a string of 5 or 10 mailboxes at the end of the road.
It's not going to happen. We have people that are infirm that need large deliveries that need to get to their houses, and they're at the end of the road. It's.
But they haven't even looked at that, is what you're telling me. That's what I'm hearing.
I can ask about that.
Okay.
I can ask about it.
And then the other thing is, said we're approximately 75 to 100 feet back from the road is the house. Certainly, if you move the fence closer to the house, you wouldn't be in violation of the zoning ordinance, right? And still be able to enjoy the quiet and the lack of dust.
I guess I'm not aware of what determines the footage off of the road for the violation.
You have to, the setback is 35 feet in a residential area in an R2 zone.
I see, yeah.
So if you move that fence back, you're at 10, if you moved it back another 25, 30 feet.
But the problem with that is that actually our land, as Gary mentioned, slopes right from the road pack and drops way down to the house is here. If I go back another foot, we need probably a 15-foot high fence to do that.
So, fencing doesn't, we've had a lot of fence applications over the years, right?
I've heard
And we've done a lot of, research on noise attenuation from fencing and, light intrusion, dust intrusion and things like that. And we always leaned heavily towards, plantings instead of fencing, right? Because it accomplishes the same thing. Right?
Yes, over time.
Right. It's not instant, although you can get trees and shrubs and things that are tall enough to accomplish the same
But you heard my
thing.
explanation about why foliage there doesn't work well. Right, because of the shade and salt, the foliage just doesn't take. In the area that's past the fence, where it's all open, that's what we'll probably do in spring, but that area is so shady that things just don't grow very well.
Okay. So those are just some alternatives that, pop into my mind, having just.
Yep. Yes.
All right, so is there anything further, Jill or Mike at this point? Nothing. Okay.
I mean, do you mind if I ask if has everybody seen the fence? Or, yes,
Yes,
can I ask what you thought about it? And I mean, separate from the fact that it was built, which obviously that was mitigating
well,
circumstance, but
you built it in violation and
I
you've been
understand.
cited for it, so
right,
from my perspective, you're in violation and you've been cited for it.
right. So I
So-
understand that.
I think the CEO indicated you should take it down, right?
He said he didn't say take it down. He said, I
Okay.
mean, not in compliance.
Right. So I think everybody I can't
He
speak for the
mentioned
rest of the
possible
board, I
fine
can
or
speak for myself, I think things being in compliance are favorable.
Right.
So. But the rest of the board is free to just, their
Certainly,
comments.
it would have been much better to talk through these potential mitigants before construction. There may have been opportunities to consider alternatives that we just walked through.
Yep.
And, we wouldn't be in this position.
I understand. Yep.
Stating the obvious, I know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have pre-application procedures and things like that.
There was some confusion though. The intention was not just to build a fence. The intention was to go through the proper venues.
In the wintertime, there is not as much dust up there, is there? Yeah,
No, there's not.
My recommendation would have been to wait till spring and put the fence up
Yeah,
there,
but
being
we
you were
were-
having,
I mean, I can't
trouble
explain to
getting
you how much anguish there was over this, literally, mentally, and emotionally. Not being able to sit outside, not being able to do anything on the property. It wasn't just that we wanted a nice looking fence to give us some privacy. So I apologize for that, but it was just to the point where it felt like there was nothing else to do.
Jill, anything further?
No, I mean, I live on Samsonville on a noisy road. I understand some of what you're saying. My husband and I did choose to plant trees, and we have a lot more trees to plant. But I understand that the challenge that you're talking about. It's hard. It is hard. It would have been good to not move forward with something you knew was in violation, though.
Yep.
And actually, I believe your house is situated similarly where it's below
Yeah,
the road level.
It's below the road level, and I constantly think about ways to make it quieter.
Mhm.
Yeah. Keep people from peeking in your windows as they drive by.
Yeah.
So
Well, one thing I probably should have done, which I didn't, I could certainly present to the board, is, to actually go out there and count the number of these large vehicles that say go by in an hour or two, to give you an idea of how much traffic there actually is.
Okay, you can take this with you. It's part of the code. And it dealing with area variances. The zoning board of appeals shall have an appeal from a decision or determination of the administration officials charged with enforcement of this law to grant an area variance as defined herein. In making the determination, the zoning board of appeals shall take into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted, as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such a grant. In making such a determination, the Board of Appeals shall also consider A, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting of the area variance. B, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Whether the requested variance is substantial. Whether the proposed area variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
Can I
And
just, can I ask a question there? I mean, what is substantial? That's a fairly vague term. I mean, what does that mean?
So allow me to finish and then we can come back to that if you hold a thought. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the zoning board of appeals, but shall include the granting of an area variance. The zoning board of appeals in the granting of area variances shall grant the minimum variance that shall be deemed necessary and adequate, and at the same time preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The Board of Appeals shall, in granting both use and area variances, have the authority to impose such reasonable conditions and restrictions as directly related to and incidental to the proposed use of the property and or period of time such variance shall be in effect. Such conditions shall be consistent with the spirit and intent of this law and shall be imposed for the purpose of minimizing adverse impact which variance may have on the neighborhood of the community. So to get back to your substantiality. So, you know, you have 4 people attending the meeting. I think we each have a different value that we place on whether it's substantial or not. It's typically calculated by a percentage of the variance being sought. So in this situation, the fence regulation is 4 feet. You're at 6, I believe. So that's a 50% variance. So some members may consider that trivial, other may consider that substantial. I know that based on past history of my term on the board, 50% has been considered significant, highly substantial. So, but that's just with it. Others may vary.
Okay.
So anything further that you'd like to add?
Not at the moment. I guess, so what's the,
Well, thank you very much.
thank you for
So-
hearing out.
We're just going to have a little bit of a discussion about it and
Okay.
then see if we'll have a motion to schedule a public hearing for the January meeting.
So I will be notified by email.
You will.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So Michael, Jill, Charlie, any discussion, questions? Follow?
You know, the only other thing I could think of, and I know this puts financial like stress on homeowners, right? So he talked about how the area that is not conducive for planting because there's already some trees that are shady. He could consider removing, if those are trees that have what is it called, too much understory, right? Like they grow tall.
Yeah.
He could consider replacing those with trees that, you know, like we chose trees that grow to the ground. We're also pretty close to a road that, I mean, Samsonville Road's constantly getting plowed and salted, but they should be fine based on where they're located, fingers crossed, you know, we'll see.
Right.
But I think there's options there too, you know.
I think also with a private road, there may be more options for how they treat it in winter. Not necessarily have to use salt, could use sand if they wanted to. That's what they use it around agricultural areas. They don't salt.
They
so
use,
that-
most of them use a mixture of salt and sand.
And sand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that could, you could minimize the use of chemicals.
Yeah,
in that
actually,
situation as well.
I think it's only the state and the county is the only ones that use pure salt.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, certainly, Mike, to your point, the applicant should have come in first to discuss the project rather than go ahead and build. I think, we're finding this with fence companies that, somehow I wish we could hold them accountable as well for some of this because they're costing these people financially.
And they know the rules too. They're well familiar
I mean,
with the rules, right?
Right. They shouldn't be building unless they have a valid permit sitting in front of them. So,
I mean, you can't do other renovations without a valid permit.
right. Well, depending on if you're doing it as the homeowner, it's different than if you're hiring a contractor.
I guess so, yeah.
And I like the point that Charlie was making about the time of year we're in, and there, to me, anyway, my opinion here is that there just was no rush to build this fence, given we're going into winter and spring. Those are the wet months. Road dust is really minimal during that time of year. We could have straightened all this out.
Right.
Also, it's a little, I mean, he paid $50. He didn't feel like he heard, was notified, or I'm not sure what happened there. Then he wasn't on the Board of Appeals docket, and so he got frustrated and withdrew his permit. And that's a little hard to feel as sympathetic a little bit for me,
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right. An extra month wouldn't have hurt to build it the right way and whatever. So I think he talked about the house, I guess what you couldn't see to the person in the audience, I take it, right? That he was asking about the distance from the house from the road.
Yep.
And the gentleman said, at first he said 80 feet, 100 feet, so let's call it, what I volunteered was, let's call it somewhere between 75 and 100. And, we can go back to one of the mapping tools and see, get a more approximation of what it is. So certainly if he moves the fence back, to where it's past the setback, where he can build it 6 feet, he'll still cut the same amount of dust down. He'll cut the same, in my opinion, he'll cut the same amount of dust down and the same amount of noise,
Yeah, and if it's on a slope, he can always build up a berm for himself, right? If he needs that.
No.
Oh, you can't do that? Oh, okay, never mind.
Right, that you're sort of cheating it a bit that way, right? It's counting in there, so.
Yeah.
I don't know how, good conversation, everybody. I don't know how many letters of support there were. I guess there are a community of 25 homes or so.
Yeah, that's what he said.
And it
Right.
seemed like, I think we saw excerpts of maybe those emails and not the actual emails, but I'm just wondering.
I'm sorry, Michael. There was a letter with comments like from multiple neighbors, but it was in one document.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for the clarification. It just seems like there are quite a few people, if not a majority, perhaps on that private road, who would be in favor of coming up with some kind of alternative that would mitigate the dust on the road. I'm no expert in road dust, but I did a little research before the meeting, and there are different things you can do to attenuate the dust. There's I saw one about spraying oil, and I don't mean like motor oil. It's like boiled linseed oil, something that is not harmful to the environment. I don't know if any of that stuff was considered, or if the neighborhood would come together behind this issue and sort of come up with a solution here.
All right. So Mike, let me just back you up a little bit on the homeowners thing. It looks like he put the letterhead to what he was asking them to sign their name to, saying that they liked it. So
I see.
one person said, fine. Another 3 said they thought the fence was acceptable, gorgeous, what they said. One said,
Yeah, I read through that.
so, but there was 2 that stood out for me though, in that was an important, the fence is nice and important to control dust since other methods are too expensive for the road association to manage. And of course, that leads me to believe that there are other methods that are available, as you say, with different
Maybe
oils.
they were researched, yeah.
But the cost is what's prohibitive. And of course, we don't consider the financial impact in our decisions, right?
Right.
So it sounds like there may be something available. And of course, at the end, there was one, of course, I can't understand why they would object. So it sounded like somebody was objecting to it,
Or they meant the board.
why the board would object. Yeah, I'm not clear on that. You might, I understood it as somebody was objecting, but you might be right. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And
Why
he
would
said,
anyone object? Right.
he said there was, did he say 20 or 25 members of the homeowners association?
25.
So that's, it's a handful. I don't know where the rest of them stand,
Sure.
you know?
And, that's not our role to go out and solicit.
No.
They have the opportunity at the public meeting if they feel strongly one way or the other, so, right. Sorry, Mike, so you continue. So the oil, what other solutions were available?
Well, again, not an expert here, but I read calcium chloride, which of course is salt, so that's
Right.
probably not a good solution.
Right.
My own personal experience with item 4 is there are different types of item 4
Right.
that you can purchase out of, like, for example, out of the Kingston area gravel pits. You'll get a little bit more quartz and more hard types of smaller stone in it that doesn't pulverize so quickly and turn to dust. That's a little higher quality. And of course, you're paying for the trucking expenses to get it down to us. So you're going to pay a premium for that product. But from what I understand and talking to some of the folks I know in that business, is that it will hold up a little bit longer and not break down into the dust that we're seeing on this road so quickly.
Right.
So just a better quality surface material.
Yeah, it sounds like they maintain it fairly frequently. They're retopping it frequently, but maybe not frequently enough or the right way.
Once a
I mean,
year.
the road, the surface looks really nice. I didn't see any potholes. It looks very smooth. Wish my road was that smooth. But maybe they need some potholes to slow the drivers down. I don't know.
I haven't had an opportunity to drive by the property yet, but how far down from the road level is the house situated? Is it a dramatic drop, or is it,
I was going off the pictures, the photos, and that video of the FedEx truck.
Yeah.
I went by, it felt very similar to our situation where it's kind of a slope down from the hill.
Right. Yours is pretty substantial, I would think,
Yeah.
I think that it's, I don't know. Depending on what direction you're coming in, which. Yeah. So, I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
Well, I'll just throw in another thing, just to throw another monkey wrench into it. So on the noise factor, we were talking about COVID, and of course, I think I read in the letter, the applicants, they've been residents on that road for 40 years. But it's really COVID where it's just exacerbated the number of trucks, the deliveries, all that. It's understandable. Hard to know what's going to happen in the future. Are deliveries going to slow down at some point? Are things going to normalize? I don't know. I guess it's really not for us to try to guess that, but it's a factor.
Sure. And actually that's what triggered it. So what I was thinking about was the speed. It seems as if the speed is the huge contributing factor to some of this, to the noise and to the dust and things like that.
Yeah.
Other mitigation measures are available in order to cut the speed down,
They just put more speed bumps and
more
leave
speed
them in.
bumps, right? I mean,
Another chemical was magnesium. That's what the state uses.
magnesium, right?
That's what the state uses with the salt when they have to.
Right.
They used to do calcium, but they did away with calcium, went to magnesium.
I think what I read was calcium chloride sort of binds the surface of the road. You know, it'll cut down on the amount
Right.
of dust. But
Right.
I don't know if that's environmentally friendly.
Got it.
I don't know what Gary uses at the racetrack now. They used to use
Right.
calcium. But
That'd be interesting. Hey, you give him a call, see what he's using.
he works with us. Maybe I can see him before our next
Yeah,
meeting and
Just
ask him.
curious, yeah, as a curiosity.
Yeah.
So we have it filed away for next time. Okay, so. All
And I
right.
don't know, I wasn't down the road. I don't know what the signage is like. I'm sure there's at least one 15-mile-an-hour, you know,
I
speed
didn't-
limit sign, but sometimes it takes more than one sign to really get people to pay attention.
Right.
Well, also, they just don't, I mean, like, don't you feel like people are constantly tailgating you when you're driving around? Like, people just drive fast. I mean, where Bruce lives, they race through constantly? And there's a pretty prominent sign, you know?
Yeah, I would say that there's occasions where I'm not as comfortable with the speed going through there. for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think with the private road, though, you have more options. I have no options with the public road. And
Right.
it's hard to get the state to lower the speed. So the town can't lower that speed limit on that road. It needs state approval in order to lower it. So it's even a more complex.
Even on a town road,
situation.
the
Yeah.
state has to approve it.
That's right. And so
Right.
they can't even, I think they can get it down to 30, but not anything less. I'm not sure. But on a private road, you know, I think about things like, you know, rather than have it be a straight through drive, if you make vehicles, you know, go around obstacles, right? To slow them
Yeah.
down,
Right.
you know. That's one way to certainly slow them down. They can't drive through a barrier, right? Definitely, but anyway. So with that, I make a motion that we hold a public hearing on this application for January's meeting.
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Oh, sorry.
And that's Carol. Hey, how's it going? It's going all right.
Mr. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Wassel,
Aye.
Apologize,
Ms.
I'm thinking
Ressler?
meetings are at 7 still.
Hi.
Chair Sari.
Right on time for a 7 o'clock meeting.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay. You're not the first person to do it.
And I'm sure I won't be the
All
last.
right, exactly.
Oh,
All right, so, and you'll notify Mr. Shapiro of that.
Yes.
All right. So the next agenda item, I believe, I have to find the agenda. Here we go.
Annual report.
Oh, the annual report. So I sent you folks the annual report that I submit to the town board liaison sitting behind me. I know that there's still some training that's going on. So has everyone had a chance to review it? Any comments other than update it for training that's taken place between now and when we put it out?
No, I haven't.
Haven't had an opportunity?
No.
Okay.
I checked, it looks good.
Same.
Okay.
I know I have enough hours, so I haven't
You do.
reviewed it. Thing.
Yeah, so, and actually, that's a great question. I can tell you what you have, Charles, because I have it in front of me. So I know I have to make modifications. Jill, I know you took some classes this past week or week and a half.
No, actually, I had enough. I just had to get Nicole all of the documentation, so
Oh, the
I'm good to go.
document.
Yeah.
Charlie, you put in an extra 2.5 this year. So you're carrying forward into next year, 8 3/4, 8.75.
And I have one that I just did. I have to check, see what is
Oh.
covered.
Okay. So I would like to just put forth a motion that I'll submit this to the town board liaison with the stipulation that I adjust it for the training that you'll submit to Nicole prior to, when is your next town board meeting?
The 28th.
28th. So I'll send it to you on the 27th.
Sounds
So that I'll add up whatever training you get between now and 27th. So that's the motion out there.
I'll second it.
All right. You can just do voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All right. Okay. Next is the approval of the minutes from November 18th.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. Verbal vote on that for the minutes. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right. Minutes are approved.
Okay, I'm just gonna consider this a nice evening drive. There will be no bill for my 13 seconds that I was here.
Uh-huh.
You saved us from financial ruin.
I did. You guys can have at least one more meeting in January.
So just informationally on the Hoots appeal, I saw that the Hoots attorney filed on the 29th, and that the attorney Svensson for the homeowners association has filed an extension.
Yes, I told her
Until-
that it's really her neighbors, her
Yeah.
clients who are affected.
Right.
And we'd like a stipulation to the 28th, which is the deadline
Right.
in January. So I told her, please write that stipulation because
Right.
I'm not charging the town for it.
Right. So I believe that was approved.
It was approved.
Right. And
Yep.
then what's the February date? February 11th?
They then have 2 weeks to respond. With holidays and stuff, it was kind of, they didn't really have 2 weeks, just the way the calendar worked with weekends and things. So when we asked for the stipulation to extend our time by 30 days, he said, can I have a couple days? We said, of course. The court said, you're not allowed to ask for your couple days until after our papers are in.
Right.
So they didn't approve that, but after
Yeah,
our
that makes
papers are in on January 28th,
Right.
we'll give him a stipulation to add a few days
Yeah, right. Yeah.
to answer his,
All
so,
right.
but we can't do it till then.
Thanks. Any other business, Charlie?
No,
No?
not that I know of.
Anything else, Jill, Mike?
Nothing here.
Good. Nicole? No?
Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
That's her business.
I'll make that motion.
All right, I'll second it. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Everyone have a
Merry
nice
Christmas.
holiday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same. Thank you.
Holiday.